Anthony Richardson is benched. That and a bunch of trades. Stefon Diggs is injured. Got a lot to break down here for you today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make us your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Joe, today on the show, we are looking at the impending trade deadline, less than a week away at this stage. We're looking at some other headlines across the league, including Stefon Diggs going down with a season-ending injury. The Texans make another move at wide receiver. Obviously, Nico Collins banged up, so some interesting storylines there. But this conversation has to start in the AFC South with the Colts chasing after a 3-touchdown wildcard loss this year by moving Anthony Richardson to the bench in favor of Joe Flacco.
Well, I think you told us what you thought of the decision here.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, man. And the Colts are in it, right? I think that's where I would want to start this conversation is they are in it. They are surprisingly at 4-4, absolutely in the mix here. They sit as the number 8 seed in the playoff race with the Chargers at 4-3 ahead of them and a couple of 5-3 teams as the 5 and 6 seeds. And so they're trying to win. And I don't disagree that Joe Flacco gives them their best opportunity to win. That's really not debatable. But when you made Anthony Richardson the number 5 pick in the draft, literally what, 2023, there had to be an understanding of a long-term play here. A guy that was under-repped coming out of Florida. The appeal was the physical upside. And now he's only got 253 dropbacks in the NFL.
10 starts.
The conversation about reps and playing time is not going anywhere. In fact, we're pushing off even further the clarity that we need about Anthony Richardson. Now, look, I think that there's more inefficiency in the Colts passing game than just Anthony Richardson, right? There's receiver errors, there's drops, there's a lot of problems. But the bottom line is that Anthony Richardson is the quarterback for an inefficient NFL passing game. But that's never going to get different if he doesn't play. And I think that's it's about having a plan for a prospect that you draft to make a huge commitment to. And it feels like you've let success to an extent, right? Kind of deviate. Yeah, 100%.
This is the New York Giants. And we saw that when the Giants in year 1 and Brian Daboll came in and went 9-7 with a bunch of unsustainable game scripts and won a bunch of games and said, we're going to give a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller so he can give us 40 catches in 2 years and then retire. Re-sign Daniel Jones, franchise tag Saquon Barkley and a little ball. And I forget who it was, but somebody had a great comment. And it's like sometimes ahead of schedule success for a team that's playing a long-term play is the worst thing that could happen. And I think some of this maybe does go back to Richardson and the take me out coach from this past game against the Texans, the 3rd down. I was tired. To admit that you were tired and need to come out of the game, which is just a really unprecedented thing for a quarterback to say, regardless of how long you ran around and scrambled back there. So maybe that's a part of this, but this is all the maturation of a player that you made this commitment in. And on one hand, I get if you're Chris Ballard, who's been there how long?
A while. Yeah.
Right. And they had a build that fell off the rails, and he was allowed to pick the next quarterback and the next coach and go through that whole process. So I get it from his perspective of like, and presuming this is Shane Steichen having a heavy hand in this decision, and it's not just a Chris Ballard decision, but like they should feel pressure to have results because of how long they've been there and what the conference looks like this year and needing to have a breakthrough. But at the same time, you've now been swept by the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
So what's your ceiling as you make a run, especially considering the next 5 games are at Minnesota, Buffalo, at the New York Jets, Detroit Lions, and at New England Patriots? I get why you put Joe Flacco in there to win some of those games, because if you played Anthony Richardson, you're probably going 1-4 at best in that stretch of 5 before your bye week. But you knew exactly, and again, this is not to dismiss Anthony Richardson for his shortcomings as a player, but you knew exactly what kind of ride you were signing yourself up for when you drafted Anthony Richardson in the top 5. And to have this short of a leash at any stage, regardless of anything, because even if it is more about taking himself out of a game, that's an indication of maturation at that position that you're still going to take that on the nose too, whether it's because of an unaware decision and poor media awareness, or whether it's because of his play in particular and not giving you as good of a chance to win football games. You guys, as the brain trust of that team, you're going to take it on the nose either way.
I think you said it best in the opening sentence that you had. You're rallying for the right to go on the road in the playoffs and go to Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, or Buffalo and probably lose at the expense of developing.
Not even probably lose.
Well, you got to play the games. You got to play the games. But
yeah,
I would say highly unlikely that they would be able to win those games.
I think it's unlikely they're within 2 touchdowns in some of these games. I mean, Houston, they've played them close twice, so you'll be fair there. But, I mean, what cream of the crop teams have they played? Their wins this season are Tennessee, Pittsburgh with Justin Fields, Chicago when Caleb was playing awful, and the Tyler Huntley Dolphins. And even the games that they lost to the Malik Willis Packers, they lost to Jacksonville, they've lost to Houston twice.
So contrast this decision to the Bryce Young decision.
At least Richardson's got tools. I could see him having a better path back than Bryce. And shoot, Bryce, they just traded the receiver they brought in this offseason to try to give him a foundational piece to evaluate him as a player.
There's no path back. I know that they're going to tell you that there's a path back. There's not. It's unprecedented. No, I'm talking about Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young, right? Okay. First-round quarterbacks don't get benched, and then it works out. We talked about this last year with the Kenny Pickett situation. When he was benched, it's like, that's it. That's it. It doesn't – guys don't get benched on the team that drafted him and come back and do anything meaningful. I cannot think of an example of that happening.
It's the same thing as like Trey Lance.
It doesn't happen.
So if you're Indy, I don't think you make any moves with Richardson the rest of the season. But you think it's likely that he gets moved this offseason? Like, the longer it goes, the less appeal he's going to have as a potential addition to another roster, right?
Dude, it's got to be a tough pill to swallow if you're Indy and you've seen what Gardner Minshew did for your team and already the Joe Flacco impact, and realize that you've been better at quarterback with journeyman backups.
There's a lot of that across the league, though.
Right. It speaks to a bigger issue with quarterbacks, the plan for quarterbacks, developing them, building around them, and giving them a fair shake. And I wonder if there's some shifts in how teams treat these quarterbacks, but that doesn't change that the timelines are quick, and you got to figure it out quick or else you get canned.
Man. And I feel like we could do the whole show on this. Can we do a little bit more of this after the break and then get into Stefon Diggs, the Texans, Diontae Johnson, all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Be sure
All right,
to stick with us. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with over 500 airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have consistently been ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOIN Bilt, BILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure you use our URL so they know that we sent you. Join Bilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today.
So if you were a team with an unsettled quarterback situation, say the Colts, right? And let's assume Anthony Richardson, there's not, and I know that's what they've tried to, they already tried to say that through one of the network insiders to say the story here is that we're giving up on Anthony, but that's not the case.
Right.
But you're going into this offseason. You look at some of the more successful pathways for teams that have found quarterbacks in recent years. Because you could look at the 22 draft class. You can now start to look at the 23 draft class with a raised eyebrow. You can look at the 21 draft class, all at the quarterback position. Success rate's not good.
Mm-hmm.
You have better chance of success. Baker Mayfield in free agency signed a 1-year, $4 million contract in Tampa Bay. Really good scheme fit. It took off. Geno Smith with the Seattle Seahawks as a guy who pinballed, bounced around. What direction, if you're, say they keep Chris Ballard, you get a chance to pick another quarterback if you want to pick another quarterback, or alternatively, you can go the free agency route. What's more appealing to you? Because I think that's the fascinating part of this is relative to this draft class, where there's a couple of guys that are starting to separate themselves, and then there's a bunch of guys that are really cool, specific skill sets with warts or lack of experience. I don't think I'd want to. Would you want to get in that boat again at all?
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to do it. And I think even Kirk Cousins as a free agent signing, looks like the rust thing's working in Pittsburgh so far, right? We'll see. It's got to play itself out. But they're telling us that they're a team that feels like with a veteran quarterback, we can be more successful than building around a young player. I think that's the decision that they're making. I don't really know what veteran quarterbacks they'll be able to lure in and do this with next year, but
can I give you the list?
Sure.
Of expiring, currently scheduled, set to expire contracts at quarterback.
Yeah. Don't give me like the Trevor Siemians of the world, though. You know,
I'll skip over them
thank
and the
you.
Marcus Mariotas of the world.
Yeah, thank you.
Sam Darnold.
Okay.
Starter, the Minnesota Vikings.
It's okay.
Zach Wilson's an expiring contract in Denver. Trey Lance is an expiring contract in Dallas. Mac Jones is an expiring contract in Jacksonville. Common theme here is that's 3 of the 5 2021 draft class quarterbacks that drafted. Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields is an expiring contract also in this class. So there's 4 out of 5 in the first round. Jacoby Brissett, Drew Lock, Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco. Now we're into the Jimmy G's, Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson. That's your list right now.
Yeah, I think they will lean into that.
Say you're not the Colts, and you assume some of these guys come off the market, but some of these guys are on the market. Would you rather do one of those guys, or would you rather send a pick for Richardson or Bryce Young and keep them on the rookie contract, but give them a new location?
The hard part about either one of those players is I didn't love them as prospects.
That's a whole separate.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what makes that difficult.
Is there one that we did like as prospects? that hasn't worked out.
CJ. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, oh yeah, CJ Stroud.
I like CJ.
CJ Stroud.
That wasn't hard.
You know what I mean? It's like, what's a better dice roll? Because you think about Baker and what he went through in Carolina and LA, and you heard he was going to Tampa, and it was like, okay, like maybe you can get back on track. And what, dude has like 21 touchdown passes this season and signed a 3-year, $100 million contract extension. Like, it's been a great success story. Geno Smith's a great success story. Sam Darnold, we'll see how sustainable it continues to be. At least Minnesota went out and made a move at tackle, and then we can maybe use that to start to segue into some of the trades that are happening. But that was not a very appealing decision at the time, and he's played well at times with Kevin O'Connell.
Here's the thing, man. I hear the quarterback development has been bad across the NFL, but when you do look at the teams that legitimately are Super Bowl contenders, they've all drafted a first-round quarterback or drafted a quarterback that has worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit would be the exception, I think, but I think they are the exception. Maybe Atlanta with signing Kirk, but other contenders, Chiefs, Texans, Bills, Ravens, Commanders, are we calling Packers? You just got to be right about it. And it's hard to be right about it, but the percentages are low. But if your best path to sustain success in the NFL is hitting on a young quarterback, do you do that, or do you?
And do we agree that the moment you bench a guy in the
it's done.
Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson have been benched, you've now declared we were not right about it. Instead of being willing to work through it and 100%. Accept bad results and get that player better and continue to evaluate that player and figure out what he needs around him, the moment you make that decision, it feels like you've made that declaration that, yeah, we weren't right. So now we're back to square one.
Right. We need to be more successful with hitting on quarterbacks. And that stems from.
Wasn't there a working theory? Sorry, finish your thought. I don't want.
No, we got to be better. It's right quarterbacks and building around them correctly to give them a real shot to win. That's what it comes down to.
Wasn't there kind of a working theory about offensive linemen that for a lot of them, like, you let somebody else develop them into the league, and then you can target guys?
The smart teams keep those players, right? Like,
right.
What examples? I don't love that.
It's more so that college offensive linemen coming into the league, it at times can take them. Their developmental leap happens later, and oftentimes happens coinciding with when they are expiring contracts.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why you have
as non-first round picks,
dude. Doesn't it just come back to having the right program in place, having a plan to develop players, to bring them in, to be able to say goodbye when necessary, replenish that talent? But how many GMs and head coaches are getting 4, 5, 6, 7 years to let that play out?
Right. Not many.
Right. Not many. But for the teams that are kind of towards the top here, they have that going on.
So is it continuity just for the sake of continuity? Or it's the same question about when you choose to declare that you're wrong on a quarterback is when you choose to declare that you're wrong on the people that are in place to run your team based on results?
You have got to be able to identify whether you have the right people in place or not. Like, if you see issues, then you got to cut bait. But if, like, I sort of respect what the Giants have done in coming out and saying, Shane and Daboll, you're good. I think that helps them. And maybe we need more of that. I have questions about whether they are the right guys, but at least they're not changing just to change.
Right.
It's complicated, man.
It's very complicated. And this is why it's such an inexact science. It's why this show, I think what we try to do is really fun, because there's a lot of layers to this and very difficult to compartmentalize and have black and white answers because of the people element versus the football element versus all of the contributing factors for every individual that's a part of the organization. But
all right, let's dive into the trades and big news across the league on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
A lot happening right now across the league.
Head on a swivel. You know it.
You called it yesterday. I said, Joe, what are we doing tomorrow? You said the NFL is going to bless us with something.
Right.
We had, and within 90 minutes of us finishing that recording, we had Diggs out for the year, Diontae Johnson trade. Let's start with Stefon Diggs and the Houston Texans as a team that has big picture aspirations as a contender in the AFC. Has Nico Collins on IR right now. Now Stefon Diggs out. Obviously, Tank Dell was a player who flashed for them last year, but there's a durability question that exists there as a player who had a season-ending injury and is not a big player at the wide receiver position.
I guess they're looking pretty smart for not trading like Robert Woods or John Mechie, who they still have. Xavier Hutchinson's got some run for them. But yeah, I mean, this passing attack, not what it was supposed to be based on availability. Certainly Collins is coming back, but Diggs out for the season. So the one thing that happens in the NFL is that wide receivers do get traded. And so if they do feel like they need to make a move there, I mean, there's options still out there in the trade market for them to explore. Kyle, and I what I go back to on this, though, was the whole deal when the deal was done for Stefon Diggs and the Texans to agree to wipe out the final 3 years of his deal. He was entering year one of a 4-year, $96 million deal. Yeah. They wiped it out so that he could be a 31-year-old free agent. And now he's a 31-year-old free agent with an ACL.
It's a big loss. It's a bigger loss for Diggs than it is for Houston.
Sure, but they gave up a 2 for this.
Yeah.
I mean, you bet on yourself.
It's the kind of bounce of the ball that, like, you could get to the other side of it, and if you don't get to where you're trying to go as a team, you'll get raked over the coals for, and it's like, it was totally out of our control.
Right.
But so from a contract perspective, you'd almost wish you'd have kept the extra years so you get a better return on investment for the 2.
Right. And then, I mean, I think there's questions mounting with Diggs. I mean, he's playing the highest percentage of his snaps this year from the slot of his career, 54% from the slot. His average depth of target's down under 9, like 8.6. And that's typically pushing 12 with Diggs. So, like, there's a shift in his role and in his impact. He's going to get 1 year, $10 million in free agency. That's what's going to happen from Dallas, right? We know he's going to Dallas.
Go play with Trayvon.
Yeah. All right. Let's move past that. We did see a trade.
The Texans buy again at wide receiver? Do you think they need to?
What do they think of Mechie and Hutchinson and Dell and Woods and Nico Collins? Like, that doesn't seem deficient to me, but if you could go out there and make a deal and get a Darius Slayton, if you could go get Mike Williams doesn't seem like the type of receiver they should go after, but there's got to be guys available that teams would be willing to part with that would make sense.
Like they have Hutchinson, Mechie, Woods, Tank Dell. You feel pretty good about those, but the appeal of what the wide receiver room became was it was a loaded group.
Yeah.
Like an embarrassment of riches type of group. And obviously they will at some point get Nico Collins back. But I think even when Nico Collins back, if the pecking order is Nico Collins, Tank Dell, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, like, that's not an embarrassment of riches. It's a really solid and deep group with one alpha type player.
Right. Diontae Johnson goes to the Ravens. And it's a good player, right? I don't have any questions about the trade.
Does the league think so, though?
Obviously not.
What he's been going for in the past 8 months in trades?
2025 6 and Johnson for a 5?
Yeah. So nothing. It's the difference of like 15 picks in the order.
A lot of teams should have been in on that. I think it's easy to cast shade at Carolina, but like that's all you can get. But I mean, I'm sure Dan Morgan wasn't like saying no to better offers. You wouldn't think. But other teams should have been in on this. Houston, Dallas. It's very surprising to me. And I guess he's probably not going to go back to Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh could use him.
Right. It makes you wonder if Pittsburgh, and especially because Pittsburgh now showing a lot of life offensively the last 2 weeks. They're averaging over 30 points a game with Russ at quarterback.
The ball well too, yeah.
Yeah. That'd be a really fascinating team to kind of watch and see. They've been sniffing around wide receivers for a while.
Right.
Mike Williams.
He'd make sense for them. And especially with Calvin Austin and how he's kind of coming along as a slot.
Right. Who's that other outside guy for you?
Mike.
Opposite Pickens. I mean, that maybe that makes sense. The nice thing now is you're halfway through the season, so any of the unappealing contracts become more appealing contracts because teams have ate about half of them already. I think that's the team I'd most like to see buy is Pittsburgh.
Yeah. They lead the division, man. They lead it. Now I think all of their divisional games come in the last 8 weeks of the season. And then their non-division games for Pittsburgh are very difficult. Let me pull this up. They have Washington, at Philly, and Kansas City. And then 6 divisional games. That's the remaining schedule. So we'll find out about Pittsburgh, right?
I mean, assume you want to say they split with all 3 North teams?
So they go 3-3 in the division. So that means they're 9-5.
9-5. They get Kansas City at home. Is Kansas City going to care?
Depends on if they're seating on the line, right?
Day. Right. It's week 17. Is Kansas City just going to be 15-0 going into the game?
Maybe.
Can't find a way to lose a game. I know you'll have something. Your Bills will have something to say about that here in a couple weeks, right?
I'm so indifferent. I'm so indifferent on the regular season game because
I know, but I'm just saying like they play in a couple weeks. If I remember,
yeah, they do. Right. So yeah, if they're going to be undefeated going into that game, yeah, that'll be a part of that story.
And then I definitely think they'll win at least one of the South or the NFC East games. They'll win one of at Washington and at Philly. If so,
you think they're either a 10 or 11 win team.
That's what I think conservatively you could say 10 wins for them. Like they'll be a playoff team.
Oh yeah, I think so.
They'll probably be the 5 seed at worst.
Right. Cam Robinson to the Vikings. Robinson and a 2026 conditional 7 to the Jaguars in exchange for the 2026 conditional 5. They had to make a move with Darrisaw out. I don't think Cam Robinson's a very good player, but
he just got benched.
He's not good, dude.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of Jags tape. He's not good. Probably get a chance to either put Harrison at left tackle and work Walker Little back into the lineup for Jacksonville. It's a dart throw for Minnesota and probably addition by subtraction for Jacksonville. Josh Uche. I looked that up, by the way. That's how you say it. Josh Uche for 6 to the Chiefs. I love that deal for the Chiefs, man.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've kind of warmed up to in my team building thoughts about building a pass rush group is I love variety. I think we talk about variety of skill sets, maybe in a running back tandem or with a wide receiver core, but like blending long arms, heavy hands, guys that can shave edges with burst and bend. I think that gives you your best chance to rush the pocket. And they have Karlaftis and they have, of course, Chris Jones and Mike Dana and Felix Anudike-Uzomah is kind of supposed to be a little bit of that burst bend guy, but he really hasn't done much in a season and a half. Uche certainly elevates their ability to rush.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think what's the risk? I mean, he didn't cost anything. I think the real question is from Josh as a guy that, for whatever reason, agents wanted to let you know that he reportedly turned down $10 million per season because he only wanted to play for the Patriots. So not only did he get a ton less money, but he doesn't get to play for the Patriots anymore.
Right.
Obviously, that's agent driven. I'm sure there's not a lot of truth to that, but kind of a weird situation. Because the Patriots had money, dude, right? They had the most cap space of any team.
Yeah, they could have signed anybody they wanted to.
Right.
Anybody that really wanted to be there, they could have locked in.
Right.
So who gets traded next?
I feel like I'm waiting for the Lions to trade for a defensive end, right?
It's a Darius Smith.
My concern with Cleveland is that they don't think that they've already traded away Cooper, but it's like, do they think that because they're 2-6 and Jameis Winston look good that they have a chance now?
Maybe. I'd hope not. And like your margin for error is just 0, right? So it's like, are you going to lose one game the rest of the way? If you're going to lose 2 games the rest of the way, if that's the case, then go ahead and tell yourself that we're going to hold on to everybody. As we wait for Joe to come back, for those of you not watching on YouTube, Joe sporadically has his audio go out, disappears, and we got to filibuster and wait till Joe comes back. So welcome back, Joe.
Thank you. Need to break.
If you're going to lose 2 games the rest of the way for Cleveland, go ahead, keep Darius Smith. Do you realistically think that's going to happen?
They shouldn't.
What other teams do you feel like, because obviously Cleveland had been so highly associated as a seller. What other obvious sellers do you think should exist out there?
Tennessee. Quandre Diggs, Sebastian Joseph Day. Trade him. Arden Key as well. I'd be thinking about trading Arden Key. I think that's actually a name to watch for Detroit.
That's their style of player.
And I tagged them for 2 sacks, but also their D-line coach that was with Arden in Tennessee last year is in Detroit. So it's a little connection there. Something to keep in mind.
What about the Giants? Darius Slayton.
Yeah.
Evan Neal can't get on the field.
Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah.
For sure.
They obviously have an influx of pass rushers and paid the big bucks for Brian Burns and have Kayvon Thibodeau, and that's a group I think makes a lot more sense to sell as well with where they're at.
Carolina, Clowney,
and who else?
Shy Tuttle, maybe.
Chuba Hubbard, if they're able to get Jonathan Brooks back and they want to kind of spread it out. Not that they're playing for wins really, but
right. Saints. Ty Matthew, Granderson, maybe some of those defensive tackles.
How many more trades do we get? How many more like significant trades do we get?
4.
You think we get that many?
Maybe more, dude. It's still we could get a bunch on Monday, Tuesday next week too.
You know what else has been interesting? Denver with Baron Browning. I've seen a little bit of buzz that he's available, which is an interesting one because Denver's at 5-3.
Yeah,
right. Like
5-3 is a good spot to be, man.
It's a great spot to be right now in the AFC, and potentially moving on from a depth pass rush player. I think there's other players that aren't playing for them that would make some sense if they could get something for them. But like, I'd almost expect them to be more of a buyer than a seller.
Right.
Defense is playing great for them. So lots of storylines left to unfold. And we will react to it as it all happens here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. And we'll be back to talk to you all again tomorrow.